Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of November 26, 2023. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. It is a remarkable astrological week, without a doubt. Big moves happening in the sky now. Boy, is this a very special time. Well, I have to say, this week, the glitz, the glamour, and the glory is going to the full moon, as it often does. Now, this particular full moon is in the sign of Gemini. It takes place on Monday. And if you look up at the full moon right around this time, well, chances are you see Jupiter there, not too far away as well. Now, Gemini energy in and of itself, it is an air sign. It is communicative. But think about the symbolism of Gemini. It represents the twins. And as such, the energy of Gemini is constantly seeking to find its twin, to find brethren in each other as the energy moves through the world. When we have important Gemini full moon energy like we have right now, chances are a lot of us are going to be feeling this desire to find a sense of meaningful connection and understanding to others. We may need to be a little bit careful here of just saying whatever needs to be said instead of what is actually truthful or actually factual. But it's more about wanting to make connections and wanting to, in many ways, strive to bring a more heightened intellectual air quality to whatever interactions we're having with others right now. And that becomes important because intellectual energy in and of itself has a way of raising vibrations. It has a way of calming some of our more base instincts. And this is going to be the work for a lot of us out there because this full moon is standing across the sky from Mars. I love the symbolism of Mars. I mean, I do love all the planets and all of the sky, of course, but the symbolism of Mars, if you look at the glyph, the circle represents self-knowledge and wholeness. And the arrow arising from the circle represents taking action from that place. However, Mars is very often in astrology a symbol of the survival instinct. It's the emotions that we got used to dwelling in, especially if they were rather intense, before we could even speak. It's how we navigated that very early environment before our intellect had a chance to take root so that we could then communicate whatever it was and is that we are feeling. And so we have Mars opposite this full moon. This to me is fascinating on the one hand, but it also gives me a little bit of pause for a few reasons. I do think more personally, as we move through life, chances are it's going to feel as if there are external drives, external motivations, external wants. And yes, that could represent people or places or situations now that very quickly provoke us, that very quickly feel like they get our adrenaline going, and maybe we feel as if we have to respond. Sometimes it can feel like factors are coming from outside of us that we don't control. But because this is a Gemini full moon, we are going to have to be mindful not only of the messaging, but chances are some of this sense of how we are being evoked or provoked is coming through words, is coming through the communication that we are receiving at this time. Now, this Mars opposition could just represent some feeling of irritation or frustration that we are able to find balance with rather quickly. But it could also be a real sense of powers that are bigger, that feel strong in some way. And they're encouraging us to figure out what power we might have in a given moment. But here's the thing, Saturn squares. I know I talked to you about Saturn squares before because I find them so interesting. Saturn squares have to do with being mindful of the restriction, of the limitation, looking at a matter honestly, even if it's hard, and even sometimes not only accepting difficult realities, but understanding what power you have to change reality and to commit to the steps that are required, to the work and sometimes the sacrifice that's involved so that we can manifest something different. Now, in this case, again, going back to that Gemini energy that is going to be dominant now, it's almost as if through words we are provoked. There's a lot of energy in the air, a lot of electricity in the air. For a lot of us out there, chances are people, as you move through life, are going to be more sensitive to words. And yet that Saturn square says, don't react, hold on, be mindful of things like, what is the right thing to do? What's the responsible thing to do? What is the larger consequence of responding in this moment? Now, there are larger consequences that can feel practical in terms of, well, if, for example, someone at work evokes a certain response in us, we may want to pace ourselves and be ourselves, as I like to say. But yeah, we may want to have that little bit of a split second of a breather, which is what this square of Saturn could grant us, so that we have that space between stimuli and response so that we can decide what our response is going to be. So there's that type, and of course that could also be bosses or other people and places that feel as if they represent authority to us. But there's also another way to understand Saturn, and that is about being ethical, about doing the right thing. And that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to get mad about things that make you mad, or you're not allowed to have a response. Of course you are. But sometimes that split second that we get, and it really can sometimes be just a split of a second, that allows us not just space, but grace to decide how we're going to respond in a given situation. Because it isn't always about responding from a place of consideration of how this other person might react or what this could mean in terms of practical consequences in your life. But one of the outcomes based on how we react in a given moment is either going to fuel healthy self-respect or not. It is either going to help strengthen our own understanding of us as an ethical person, someone that we can respect, and where it is that we respond or react or behave in ways that kind of take us off course. Well, that distinction and that disconnect can feel rather painful sometimes. And I think that's what we have here in many ways. The energy of Gemini can be all talk. Talk matters, right? Talk is important. You know, I love to talk. I have a grand trine air in my chart. And there's something about communication that is infinite. I absolutely love communication of all kinds, because any information you are exposed to ever, a conversation, an in-person, a text message, a whatever, something you read, maybe a work of art that you see, it forever becomes a part of your consciousness, especially your unconscious. And when you least expect it, sometimes 10 years later, 20 years later, that exact piece of information, conversation that was communicated to you or that you observed can arise at a moment when you least expected it, but most needed it. And that's why it becomes really important to be mindful of what types of information we are exposing ourselves to the best of our ability, trying to stay in alignment with greater love and greater wisdom, while also the balance can be and the recognition can be that there are things that can happen that feel really big, that can have us feeling powerless, that can feel unfair or unjust as well. It is part of the mystery of the world that we're in and the universe, a kind and loving universe that we're in, is that we have these moments where we are confronted with these truths of where life can look and feel as if it is not loving, it is not wise, and yet it's in those moments that we are invited to work even harder, to seek the wisdom, to seek the love, especially when it challenges us, especially when our instinct is to respond. And that instinct can feel so deep, it can feel so old. It operates as a trigger of sorts. And yet, that split second where we get to decide how much a given moment is going to trigger us, but also how much a given moment is about what it is in and of itself and how much it isn't. And so I'll give you an example. Of course, one way you could interpret this understanding of this full moon is with world events. Less than ideal situations, strong provocations are playing out right now, but at least there's diligence, and there are moments here of healthy restraint that I think are going to be encouraging to some in the collective. But the other consideration, perhaps more important, I would say, some people might not agree with that, but I would say your mental health, very important. Perhaps it should be right there at the top. Because it is when we are aware of how we are doing and how we are feeling, physically, mentally, spiritually, well, that place of awareness allows so much more awareness to unfold from there. But also taking care of how we're thinking about things and making sure that we are adamantly focused on wanting not just to be exposed to things that help affirm love and wisdom, but also that we're taking it in, that we are turning that perspective onto ourselves in terms of our self-talk, especially at this time. You know, you could look at a person and that person can convince themselves that they are the most fortunate, most blessed person on the planet. And someone else with that exact same life could convince themselves that they are the least fortunate person in the world at this time. So much of it is perspective. And I think that's the work of this moment. And chances are the work is going to come up rather quickly. But the fact that it arises, perhaps it means that it's work that we are ready to do. We're ready to embrace. We're ready to consider. Observation in and of itself creates and facilitates transformation. It is when we get to that place, when we're ready to observe, well, before observation comes acknowledgement. Once acknowledgement has happened, well, then observation becomes a natural outcome. And once we have begun to observe a thing, person, place, thing, situation, our own thoughts, our own sense of well-being can transform in front of us and for the better. We may need to create that intention that is for the better, but I think that with this full moon energy, and not just because of the full moon, there might be a little bit of a dip. It might be that many of us feel as if we stepped into some kind of Mercury retrograde energy when we didn't expect it. Now, that is because under the light of the full moon, we are going to get Mercury square Neptune. Not speaking with the full moon, but Mercury is the ruling planet of Gemini, which means that a full moon in Gemini, we also have to pay attention to what is happening with Mercury so that we can gain further insights into how we may experience this time and that full moon energy. But consider this. We are now in a period that is the larger Mercury retrograde period. Mercury recently went into shadow. So Mercury has begun walking a path that Mercury will eventually retrograde over. So that's the second pass on the same path in the sky. And then Mercury will go direct on the same path, will move for a third and final time in direct shadow. And then the larger season ends when Mercury is on a brand new pathway. So we're on a pathway right now that looks one way, but could end up being something very different. A part of the reason is that Mercury square Neptune in and of itself does suggest that, yeah, we're not seeing things clearly. There's like a haze, or there's a sense of us not grasping some reality. And then here comes this full moon and says, this is the reality. Look at it, understand it, accept it. Even if it's hard. And with Mars opposition, yeah, it might be hard. We may feel like we don't have a choice but to look at it, but to accept it. Now, another key characteristic of this larger Mercury retrograde season, well, it's going to start to kick in before the week is even out. On Friday, Mercury changes signs, moving into the sign of Capricorn very quickly on Saturday, aligning in harmony with Saturn. Back in the day, I remember having key conversations with an absolutely brilliant astrologer. He is famous in Canada. Lots of people know him. His name is Robin Armstrong. And he was one of the first people I actually interviewed for my channel. And I'll tell you, with Robin Armstrong, I'd heard his name for so long. And I remember my aunts telling me that, oh, I got a reading from the famous astrologer Robin Armstrong. And they got these taped readings, right, that he used to do back in the day. And I don't know, maybe he still does. Just brilliant and beautiful and heartfelt. I love him so much as an astrologer and as somebody who really was there and encouraged me in those very early years as a full-time astrologer. But Robin used to say something to me, and this is just gold. This is a gem. He said, Neptune needs Saturn. Neptune can be all dreams, can be all hearts and wishes and belief and diving into the ocean of humanity and absolutely loving it, having a blissful experience. But Saturn is what helps to take that dream and energy and actually manifest something that you can be proud of. It can take the dream and make it reality. Saturn and Neptune need each other in a way because Saturn in and of itself, well, can be rather dire because sometimes reality bites, as they say. Reality can be hard. And as they tap into the power of each other, and as we tap into their powers, we're able to move towards something more inspired and also real. And so we have the square of Mercury and Neptune. And then by the time we get to the end of the week, Mercury sextile Saturn, that is when we have a moment of groundedness, especially on a level of thought and mind, on a level of our thinking patterns. It's like we understand what we have to do if we are going to get ourselves out of whatever sense of our thoughts going in a direction that isn't serving us. It is an opportunity to create structures and systems that support us so that we, in our own mind and with how it is that we are thinking, well, to ensure that through thinking, our actions flow and that those actions affirm and fuel healthy self-respect. That is always the higher intention of Saturn, is to help us to truly be grounded in an understanding that when we make promises to ourselves, we keep them, that we're able to evaluate what's worth sacrificing for and what isn't. We're able to understand that our time is valuable, our energy is valuable. So we are going to give it in a direction that merits us, that actually matters to us. And we're going to move beyond just dreams. Dreams are necessary. We need dreams. They keep us going. We need hope. It is eternal. It is a strong force. But it is Saturn that invites us to embody those dreams and that hope, that invites us to consider much more deeply how it is that our dreams can become real. With Mercury sextile Saturn before the week is out, it's about making a plan to make them real. But because Mercury is in shadow, it does suggest it's a good idea not to make big life-sweeping changes, at least not just yet. It's a good idea to pace ourselves at this time. Chances are we might not be seeing very clearly or really understanding certain nuances that could be rather important. The retrograde kicks into gear December 13th, and it is going to be New Year's Day that Mercury goes direct and begins to walk for a third and final time the same path. And that's when whatever happened this week is going to look very different in those first weeks of January. And I will be here to talk about it every step of the way. Now, there's another reason I'm talking so much about Neptune, and that is the fact that Neptune is stationary this week. Next week will go direct. I'm going to have a lot to say about that. That is a huge event. Happens once a year with Neptune stationary direct. But it's the lead up to it where Neptunian energy is especially strong. It's sort of hanging around. And this sense of Neptune hanging around means that some of us are going to feel like we're in a little bit of a daze, in a little bit of a dream, that not a whole lot is super clear to us, but that's okay as well. There's a sense that we are on the precipice of some wake-up call, and we're wondering whether or not we're ready for it. So this could be energetically something we are feeling. It could be in terms of practicalities. We're waiting on some developments to take place. So again, it's a good idea to just practice patience at this time, especially with ourselves. We're going to be that much more glad for it. We're not seeing things very clearly as it is with that Mercury-Neptune square in the early days of the week, and the fact that we are already in a Mercury shadow period. And so just know there is this big wake up call, lights on moment that is right around the corner, especially when it is that you find yourself really traveling the more dreamy, hopeful spaces. Have hope, believe in dreams, but also ensure that your thoughts from which your dreams are arising and your hopes are arising are rooted in love and wisdom. That's when you know that you're on the right track. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It is a valuable and meaningful astrological moment. I am going to say the full moon. Now, I know it isn't necessarily the easiest energy, this particular full moon standing across Mars, squaring Saturn. We are going to feel frustrated by the limits of what is possible for us at this time. But let that inspire motivation. And the motivation ultimately is to do what we can to move our lives in a direction that we hope, or to move the world in a direction that we hope it'll go, to contribute some part. In order for meaningful transformation to occur, we first have to acknowledge what it is that isn't working for us. And as part of that process with Gemini energy, we could talk ourselves into circles at this time, convinced that we know, and having a logic that maybe if we took a little bit of a step back, we realize isn't necessarily going to get us where it is that we're hoping to go. And it becomes really important to practice self-care so diligently and to trust that whatever impetus, whatever outside events need to happen can ultimately help awaken the power that we do have. And what is our greatest power? It is the choice to focus on, to take that split second and say, okay, how is this moment right now? How is this split second part of my journey towards greater love and greater wisdom? Part of my journey towards embodying those very higher values that you know are more real and more true than any kind of adrenaline-filled, impulsive reaction that you might have to some external stimuli. And that split second can be a saving grace now, ensuring that however we respond, however we react, we maintain a healthy sense of self-respect in our journey of life. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys, and to prove it to you, here's some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up. All of it means so much. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all the celestial events this week speak to you in your sign, well, there's two things you can do. One is log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded, exclusive video scopes each and every week for each and every sign for as low as just $3 a month. But choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. And of course, remember as well, let me remind you, monthly horoscopes are posted on my YouTube channel. Superstars do get early access to those, but the beginning of every month, For years and years and years now, I've been publishing monthly horoscopes and I've loved doing it. And so, yeah, November was no different. And in the monthly horoscope, I did look at this full moon in the video for your sign. So make sure you check that out here on my YouTube channel. Synchronicity University has some incredible events coming up this January, and right now, for a very limited time, you can choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate to learn from superstar astrologers of this caliber. And I am so proud to present them and continuing to offer these truly brilliant people to you. And they include, and I'm going to start with the one and only Cameron Allen. Now, Cameron Allen is a superstar in astrology right now and will continue to be. I know that for sure. He's a medical astrologer, and he's going to be bringing his third medical astrology class to Synchronicity University this January. It's a wonderful way to start a new year, connected to that energy of health. Now, you don't necessarily need to have taken his previous classes, but if you log on to synchronicityuniversity.com, you will see that his previous programs are there as well, also for just $5 a class. So you can catch up. Those are instant downloads, but these classes that he's teaching with his new program is going to be coming up this January. And I have to tell you, Cameron is just so wise and loving. He is rooted in those principles so strongly. Every time I talk to him, I feel like I come away so grateful for the insights that I have gotten, whether it's on camera, which is usually I get to talk to him just off camera once we've been on camera. My goodness, does he ever give and encourage the cultivation of wisdom in the people that he talks to and the people that he inspires. And I'm definitely one of those people as well. So grateful that Cameron Allen spent that time with me on camera, talking about Saturn and medical astrology. I gained some very valuable insights, and you can see that. And so that interview will be publishing very soon here on my YouTube channel. And of course, you can learn so much more about Cameron Allen's upcoming course in medical astrology, his third course with us at Synchronicity University, a very special teacher that so many of you resonate with. And yeah, learn a lot more at synchronicityuniversity.com. You have got a few weeks left to choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class with Cameron Allen. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University presents superstar astrologer, the absolutely brilliant and inspiring Stormie Grace. Stormie Grace is back. I know that students of Synchronicity University absolutely love her, as I do as well. And Stormie Grace is going to be doing a 5-week course just about what the South Node in Libra and the North Node in Aries in 2024. Well, what's that energy going to be about for you? How to interpret it, how to look at it in your chart, how to understand that symbol with greater depth. She has so much to share about this that she's going to do it over the course of 5 weeks, a 5-week course. Now, the nodes, of course, are very powerful symbols. I look at them as the promises that the soul made to itself before it incarnated. And it is by becoming aware of the nodes that we can bring to our consciousness, bring to our awareness what that soul promise, those soul promises, those soul contracts just might be for us. And having 5 weeks just on looking at the nodes in 2024, but also personalizing it, making it about you, making it about what it is that is happening in your chart, how these symbols are speaking in your chart, how to interpret these from a personal lens. Well, Stormie Grace is going to look at all of that. Of course, you've got a few weeks left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate to learn from the one and only Stormie Grace. I tell you, she is the embodiment of brilliance, but also love. She is constantly welcoming in greater and greater opportunities. She deserves it, and so much more. I'm so proud to see how much she's grown over the years that I've been working with her, and it's only been a few years, But I'll tell you, when I do my business class every summer at Kepler College, I always mention Stormy Grace as an example of how love can get you everything. I truly believe that. And she's a wonderful example of how that comes together professionally for people. And so check out her astrology, check out her YouTube channel, learn more about her at synchronicityuniversity.com, and you can sign up for her course. What a wonderful way to start 2024, aligning with greater love and greater wisdom as represented by the nodes of the moon. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University has an incredible January 2024 speaker series coming up ahead, and you've got a limited time to choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate to learn from this caliber of astrologer, and I'm so elated to celebrate them with you. Let's take it one at a time because we've got quite a few topics that are going to be covered. Now, first and foremost, I do want to mention my dear friend, Andy of Wise Ass Astrology. I know you've seen him on my channel a bunch of times, and he is such a brilliant astrologer. Yes, he's wise ass. Okay, that's what he does. He's got his presentation. I happen to absolutely love it. I know it's different than mine, and that's okay. But you will learn so much in his class, I'll tell you. And he is just one of the most brilliant astrologers I've ever met. He's somebody that I go to, that I message when I say, oh my God, this is happening in my chart and this is happening in my life. And then he'll be like, well, yeah, that's happening in your chart. And it means this as well. And just gives me a whole other perspective. That is how brilliant an astrologer he is. And I don't say that lightly. So learn about relationships from my dear friend Andy of Wise Ass Astrology as part of the January 2024 speaker series. Caesar Love, first time he's going to be teaching at Synchronicity University, and he is going to be looking at basketball. Why is it such a phenomenon? What's going on there? Now, I am not sports inclined at all, whether it's playing them or it's observing or watching a sport, and that's okay. A lot of people really, really love sports, and that is Caesar Love. And I think this is going to be such a wonderful new perspective that we are going to have at Synchronicity University. I'm really looking forward to exploring basketball from an astrological perspective with Caesar Love. Carrie Samuels is teaching a numerology class and how it connects to astrology. This is going to be so fascinating for so many of you out there, I am absolutely sure. Numerology is something that I actually use in my own life. I don't really do videos around it so much. Maybe one day I will, but I know how enriched my own spiritual path is by understanding numbers and exploring and deepening my practice in numerology. So Carrie Samuels is going to bring that and help you to understand and enrich it. And in some cases, yeah, present you with, introduce you to how it is that you can tap into the power of numbers and their connection to astrology. Anna Andrade is going to be bringing the Vertex to Synchronicity University. Now, if I remember correctly, I saw her speaking with one of the main astrology organizations online. These professional development webinars take place. You may know some of these organizations like ESAR, NCGR, and I heard her talking about the Vertex, and I loved her class. I thought that the Vertex is something that has shown to be so powerful in my own chart, in my own life. And I wanted her to bring this understanding to Synchronicity University. And so now she is teaching for the very first time at synchronicityuniversity.com as part of the January 2024 speaker series. Now, the Vertex is a powerful karmic point. Anytime in my life, in my chart, when the Vertex has been activated, oh boy, do new people come in? Does my life change in real ways based on new people, places, things, situations that ultimately lead me back to an understanding of those soul level promises and so much more. So she's going to talk about the Vertex with a lot of depth and a lot of nuance. This is a class that you don't want to miss. And Carl Glimmick is going to bring lunar gardening. This is so exciting. Now, Carl Glimmick is somebody that I interviewed before. You've seen him at Synchronicity University. He is a weather astrologer, and I had a chance to get to know him and meet him in person at the recent Canadian astrology conference that I was a part of. And I just think he is brilliant and charismatic and such a wonderful teacher. So this is somebody that you also don't want to miss. I know I'm really looking forward to sharpening my skills where it comes to lunar gardening and how the cycles of the moon, how we can tap into them to make the most of how our garden unfolds, especially over the course of a given season. And so sign up now. January 2024 speaker series at synchronicityuniversity.com is going to be very special. You've got a limited time to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate to learn from this caliber of astrologer. Links are in the description below. And thank you. Thank you so much for this moment with you. Thank you for your trust. I'm so grateful for it. I hope that you are enjoying this full moon energy. I am in my last couple of days now in Uruguay, a very, very special place. I hope life brings me back here very, very soon. And it's on to Puerto Rico. It's on to a marathon party with Daddy Yankee, who you may not know, but I absolutely love. I love his music. So I'm looking forward to that and meeting friends and fans in Puerto Rico as well. And so I so feel blessed, and I'm so grateful that I get to share my journey as I go along, and that I'm able to stay grounded in an understanding of astrology and share those astrological insights with you. Well, it makes my journey that much more richer. Thank you so much for seeing me as some part of your sacred journey as well. And thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.